hello again, everyone. It's time for us to move on to our next session, which is going to be a CWNE panel. So we've got a few CWNEs that are going to come out and join me on stage. We're going to talk about some important things and give you a chance to ask any questions that you might have. First of all, we have Jim Vada, who is coming out now. Right now. There he is. All right. And we have Femi Sakal coming out. And Jason Hintersteiner, sure thing. And we're going to talk a little bit of shop here, and maybe let them share a little bit about their experience and journey with the CWNE process, as well as be able to answer any questions that you might have for them or for me about the CWNE process, CWNE certification. And I'll open this up to, if you have questions, you're always free to come to me on the side. Many of you do that, and thank you for that, to ask me about where we're going with all kinds of things. So, if you have questions about CWSE and where it's going and when it'll be here and that kind of thing, you can certainly talk to me on the side, but you can even ask them now if you want to, so that'll be fine as well. And some of those up here are a bit aware of that track too, because they've been helping to develop it and working on it in different ways. So first of all, just go down and let each person introduce themselves, tell us where you work, what are you doing from day to day, and when did you get your CWNE? So we'll start there.
Yeah, so hi everybody, Jim Vada here. I am the Director of Global Wi-Fi Solutions at 7Signal, so I mostly do sales engineering there. I'm CWNE number 183, got that in 2016, and have had wireless engineering experience in healthcare with MSPs and K-12. Those are kind of the big areas for me.
Excellent.
My name is Fahmi Sakal. I work for Aruba, so I've done so for the past 7 years. Stayed with Aruba after HP acquired us. And I pretty much worked in all verticals because that's what makes it interesting for me, like looking at the same access point, looking at the same solution or product, and seeing how you should align it with a specific use case, with a specific customer. I cover Abu Dhabi and some aspects of the region in the Middle East and Africa when it comes to guest experiences and those nifty BLE beacons, how you place them on the Meridian platform and try to push notification if it works. And I got my CWNE back in September 2017. It was right before Wi-Fi Trek in Orlando.
Yeah. Excellent. Jason.
Hi, I'm Jason Hintersteiner. I'm CWNE number 171. I got mine in December of 2015, so right before the holidays, which was great. Currently, for the last 3 weeks now, I've been working at a division of Comcast Business called Deep Blue Communications, which specializes in, it's an MSP that does hospitality Wi-Fi primarily, as well as a few other things, and we're expanding it now that we're part of Comcast to kind of grow the business into lots of different verticals. And I have experience over the last 11 years working in Wi-Fi for MSPs and for vendors. So I've done work in a lot of different verticals. Many of you know me from presentations on point-to-point and point-to-multipoint, which I've been specializing in the last few years. So I've dabbled in a little bit of everything when it comes to Wi-Fi, and I'm really looking forward to now dabbling into BLE and IoT and some of the other stuff that's out there.
Awesome. Well, and you know me, I'm Tom Carpenter. I am CWNE number 104 because Sam Clements, who's in here somewhere, got a lower number than me because I gave it to him instead of taking it for myself. You're welcome. You're welcome. Quite seriously, when I came on board at CWNP, the only thing I didn't have was my CWNE, and so that was kind of the last step. And so we got with the person going out to look over my application to approve it. It was approved, but at the same time as it was approved, there were several other applications being approved. It was before the board. It was when one person at CWNP approved or rejected CWNE applications, and there were several others that needed to be approved. And if I approved those others, I could have given myself CWNE 99 or 100, and I just couldn't do it. couldn't take that from somebody else. So I gave all of them away, and then whatever was left, I took that as my number. And that's why you'll hear me say the CWNE number doesn't matter. Number doesn't matter, because I already gave up my number. All right, so I've been around wireless for quite a while myself. It's funny, maybe not all of you know this about me, but I actually started writing books for CWNP certifications long before I ever came on board to CWNP. Back in 04, 05, McGraw-Hill at that time was the official publisher for CWNP books, and did a CWNA book, did a Wireless Sharp book, CWTS, CWSP with a couple of other gentlemen, then a CWNA, CWSP all in one. So quite a few books back in that era before, David and David went over and got a contract with Cybex, and Cybex stole away the contract. Are you in here, David? He just left. No, but it was those early days, and it was a lot of fun, actually. I got to work with some people that really aren't involved in the industry anymore, that were brilliant and detail-oriented to such a level that kind of taught me the importance of those things, especially in this space. So that was a very exciting time to come in and start getting involved. And plus, it was a time when, back then, Devin was still making you learn about very complex details of things that didn't matter. And so I got to go deep into that stuff too and learn about it. And it was really cool. It really was a neat window of time for me. And it's when I fell in love with the standards. I'm that weird person. I read those. The reason I know about this stuff that I was sharing with you today out of the Task Group MD and things like that is because I actually do go read those minutes. I know that sounds horrible and like I must be a real loser in life, but I actually go read those minutes. I look at those things. I study the details and find out what's going on because it's interesting to me, very interesting to watch the whole process and to learn about it as it goes. So, all right, so here's what I want to talk about. So all of you have had your CWNE for a few years now, actually. You've had your 2-year anniversary within the next week or so, if not already in the past week or so, right?
Yep.
So it's like right around this time. And so all of you have had them for a few years now. Since you acquired your CWNE, what have you been learning? Who wants to tackle it first?
I'll start if
Yeah,
you
Please don't say nothing. It will totally ruin the discussion.
I would say that the CWNE was definitely not the end of the journey, and it was not necessarily the start of the journey, but it's certainly not the end of the journey. There's always more to learn, right? And our industry keeps changing. They keep coming out with new specs every few years, which is really damn annoying, because we keep having to relearn how to design our networks and to deploy our networks. And now where I see the industry going is less focused solely on the Wi-Fi design, but now focused on all of this cool stuff that Tom talked about in the last hour, right, of all the stuff you can put on that network, right, using Wi-Fi as a backhaul. And that we're going to be expected to be doing a lot more than Wi-Fi in the future. And, so now it's like, well, crap, now I have to learn programming. Right, at least Python scripting. Yep. And maybe I got to learn a little bit about, breadboarding electronics and so forth, which, I did a little bit of in college, but that was that was a lot of hair ago. Let's just leave it that way.
Yep. I discovered that I don't understand the standards good enough, even after I finished CWNE. My story with the CWNE was a self-study story. I never attended any training with any CWNT or learning center, and that's why it took me most probably I think 6.5 years to see it through. I had to recertify at one point for a few exams, but this is where I'm getting better at it now, because when people look to me as a CWNE, I have to say that yes, I'm responsible enough to carry that title of being a CWNE, and it's getting better and better for me. And the announcement that we did last year with going into all things wireless and not only Wi-Fi, this is what's keeping things interesting, because even vendors have realized this. I know Aruba, for one thing, has its Zigbee and BLE and multiple radios in the access points now. If a vendor is doing it, it means that yes, something's going on, and wireless is where we want to be. Not very hands-on, maybe a lot like Jason. Personally, I don't like to get my hands on hardware, but maybe being more involved in IEEE meetings and looking at the standards and understanding the lexicon of wording, like what's the difference between may and can and shall and not and yes and no. And, this is all interesting. Yeah.
Good. Jim?
Yeah, a lot in 3 years. So there was no 802.11ax, and so that's probably the number one thing I've learned the most about. But also, after finishing my CWNE, it made sense to dive into some vendor certifications and learn about all their special sauce and how they implement different parts of the standard and what's called what and what the knobs on different vendors' implementations do. So I've learned a lot about Cisco in particular since getting my CWNE. And a little bit like you, I don't read the meeting minutes, but I do dive into the standards. And so, one of the things I did after getting my CWNE was go and pass the new CWSP that came out after that. And it had new information about encryption and new security suites that 802.11ac introduced. So learned about that. But, I've probably learned more since I got the CWNE than I knew before it, right?
Yeah.
You have to constantly be learning in this industry.
And because
to
you
stay current.
can learn things now
Right.
you couldn't learn before.
That's true.
Because you need the foundation to be able to go to that next level. And so, if you think about it in the realm of modulation, you can learn about modulation conceptually, but you can never learn about modulation practically if you don't understand physics and math of physics and the ability to even read a formula in the first place, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a foundation that has to be there before you can go to that next level of studying that, and it's true in wireless as well. So once you get to that CWNE level, it just really means you can now go even deeper and learn even more. Definitely. All right. Well, I don't want to take up all the time with us dictating the discussion. So I have more that we can talk about, but I want to give you the chance to make sure that during the time that we have, if you have any questions you want to ask, you get the chance to ask those. So does anyone have any questions you'd like to ask this group of CWNEs that are up here? Anyone at all? Right over here. Ask loudly, please.
So I've got my certs done, and I'm working on my CWNE application. I am going to do a third-party certification. So what's your favorite third-party certification?
Oh.
I don't think we don't officially have one. We like to see certifications that are not that are related in networking.
Jason's answering as a board member, and I think you just wanted to know his...
From your personal perspective.
He's just saying you personally, if you were to go after
personal
it.
perspective.
He was about to tell you how he's going to look at your application when it comes in.
Oh, my own. I did Network Plus and Security Plus, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend anymore. But there's some good, there's some good vendor certs out there from Aruba and Cisco have some good vendor certs. Ruckus has some good vendor certs. Ekahau, is a very valuable. I think it's a cert that I'm actually looking at getting now for myself. Some of the Ekahau certs. It should be whatever is kind of related to your job and your interest and kind of what you do. So that's at least my opinion. So.
And because of that one, you're more likely to pass because you don't have to take all the time retaking it.
I think I'd say the Cisco CCNA, just the normal one, and I don't know how they're reorganizing everything, but the kind of classic CCNA that's all route switch. The CWNP stuff is everything you need to know about Wi-Fi, but you really got to know, the backhaul networks and how all that works too. I'm not on the board, so that's just my personal opinion, but CCNA will, ensure that you're really a well-rounded network engineer.
It kind of gives you the networking essentials side of things, doesn't it?
Right.
I'd say it's just a personal preference, because the same way you asked the question. For me, applying for the CWNE is applying for a job, and it's like putting in my CV. And I want the employer to see that I'm focused around the certifications that are related to that job description or hiring opportunity that I'm applying for. I have a PMP, for example. I can make the hiring manager see how a PMP is related to wireless design, to the CWDP. That's one way to do it. But I didn't go for that. I just went for my Aruba certs. They're not my favorite. I'd say my favorite would be a mix of network basics with the CCNA and wireless planning with the ECSE, like an ICAO certification. But just do whatever you feel is your focus in your area of expertise. That's it.
And I would say for myself, because I love security, so for me it would probably be, and this is going to surprise some of you, because I generally don't really care that much for CompTIA's certifications, but I really like their CASP certification. I really do.
That's a new security.
It's been out about 3 or 4 years now, but it's an advanced level cert. I think they have 2 at that level now, but I really like CompTIA Advanced Security Practitioner. And the reason I like it is because after having taken that exam, I can say that if you can pass that exam, you actually know something about security, so it's not like Security Plus. Well, I mean, I'm not trying to be mean with that. I mean, Security Plus is definitional, right? So it's kind of like CWS with us. And there are certifications that ought to be there. You ought to have those certifications that are very entry level. And to me, Security Plus doesn't really meet the level of what it ought to be. It ought to be a bit more practical to me, since it's, for the longest time, was the only security cert they had. But I think it's very definitional in nature. CASP is not that way. They will throw you into labs in the exam. You've got to do things. You've got to use tools that don't exist anywhere on the planet. They've made up fictitious tools that someone who has worked in the industry would be able to intuit how to use and get in there and get the job done. So that makes it challenging and interactive, and I really like the exam. So I think CASP is a good one for me.
Hey, Tom, am I allowed to join this roundtable?
No. No, go ahead.
Just a couple more notes on the Security Plus. One of my first IT jobs is I worked on a help desk for the Navy and Marine Corps. And it was, we were working adjacent to secure networks. And so Sec Plus was great for people at that call center because it was just a good intro to security. But I would agree with you, it's not really an in-depth security certification. I haven't heard of the CASP before, so I'm going to have to check that one out.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you're ready for CASP, you can go do something in security. If you pass Security Plus, all you can really do is go learn to do something in security, because you have the foundational definitional knowledge to do it. I guess that's the way I would describe it. But again, it's true for CWS as well. CWS gets you ready to go learn to do something with wireless. It does not teach you to do something, because that's not its goal. So, all right, any other questions? Right over here. And he's coming to you with a microphone.
Just what would be 1 or 2 words of advice or points for someone that's just starting their CMP journey and wireless LAN journey?
Start with the CWNP certs. I mean, they are certifications that are there to, mark that you understand something and issue a credential. But for my experience, doing several different certifications, I learned the most doing the CWNP stuff. So jump right in with CWNA, read the Old Testament science book, and that's a great way to get started.
But next year, there will be a New Testament.
Yeah, looking forward to that one.
It's just the apocryphal chapters. It's all right.
I agree with Jim. Have the CWNA over there for you as a reference. If you're just getting started, so we're always having people talk about their journeys in CWNE, and yes, after your CWNA, finish it, and then you go to AP, like Keith mentioned yesterday. Or no, you should go to DP, and then do AP, and then SP. So you need to follow a specific sequence. It all depends on your preference. If you're coming from a different background and you have no wireless expertise or experience or hands-on or practice, or, theoretical knowledge, just get the knowledge while you're doing the practice and see what it takes you as you go. You might be working more in implementation, so CWDP would come to you naturally. So you wouldn't have to worry about design, maybe more into security like Tom mentioned. So it might go this way or the other way, but make sure you have theoretical tied into experience, hands-on, hand in hand as you're going. That's my advice.
Yeah, and I would add, build a home lab. Get some cheap, APs from eBay that were 4 years old. Now they're only $20.
Or a free AP a vendor gives you at a conference.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got one of those last night, luckily. And have that hands-on experience configuring it, looking at packet captures, making things work. That makes a big difference.
The
too.
other piece of advice that I'll add is don't be afraid to ask questions. So there was a time in this world before I joined Twitter. And I know many of you find that hard to believe because I'm probably one of the most prolific people on Twitter in our community. But I didn't join Twitter until it was a WLPC conference in Dallas in 2015. So I was studying for the CWAP at that point. I had my CWNA and DP, and I was studying for the AP at that point. And I remember Keith getting up on stage, and he was like, "You got to be on Twitter." And I was like, before that, I was like, "Twitter is stupid. I'm never going to go on Twitter." And the reason to go on Twitter is, and I don't know why the Wi-Fi community decided on Twitter as being kind of the forum for all of us to talk to each other all over the world, but that's what it is. And you can post questions, and certainly while I was learning, I would post questions as like, "Hey, I came across this, and I don't really understand kind of what this OFDMA thing, we didn't have OFDMA back then, but like, you could post a question as like, how does this OFDMA thing work, or how does like WPA2A, and people will answer you. And people in this community are eager to share their knowledge, 280 characters at a time. And sometimes we talk smack about the technology and such, but it generates a lot of discussion and a lot of interest, and you can really learn a lot in following the conversations that we have about Wi-Fi on Twitter. And when you're struggling to kind of understand a particular concept, or you're studying for an AP and you're like, how does this block ACK thing work? Like, this makes no sense. Ask. People will help explain it.
Yeah, and I would add too in the learning process that as you leave each topic as you're going, make sure you understand it. You really understand that topic. I'll give you an example of it, okay? So we all have to study CSMA-CA when we're going through CWNA, right? And then we might get a little more detailed in CWAP or CWDP. But we all have to study that concept. Well, when I was studying it very early on, looking at 802.11, getting ready for my first attempt at CWNA, when I was outside the organization, I wasn't happy with understanding the process that was being taught to me because there were missing pieces. There were pieces like, for example, when a device sends a frame and does not get an acknowledgement back, I wanted to know, how long does it wait? How does it know when to try again? How does it know when it didn't get it back? How long has been long enough that it can assume it's not going to get a reply? I wanted to know those things, get those questions answered, and that's what got me started into diving into the standard. Because if you go into the standard, guess what? There's a parameter that's defined for each PHY that says how long you're going to wait before you retry the frame again. There's an answer to that question. And it wasn't answered and not only, it wasn't just that it was CWNA or DP or AP, it was in no other place. Nobody would really talked about that. And I was curious to know, how long is the delay before a retry? Because that is a factor in performance on the network. It's not just a raw factor of how many retries, but what is the delay between retries? Because that also impacts how it impacts or determines how it impacts the network. And so I wanted to know what is that RF PHY start delay? And that's what it's called in the standard. So when you start studying and you run into something like that and you feel like there are gaps, go find the place in the 802.11 standard. You can download the 2016 standard for free. So go in there, and if you can't find it, just email me, tom@cwnp.com. I'll give you direct links, make it easy for you. You go in, you can read that section, and you'll see there are other things they talk about that maybe aren't covered in the book because it was felt that you don't need to learn it at that level or something. But when you go deeper like that, you come out with an understanding. I call it a light bulb moment. There's an awareness, a real comprehension of how this thing works. And when you really know how it works, then you're a master troubleshooter. When you don't, then you always have problems. So
If you get an opportunity to teach, even if it's just internally in your own company to train help desk people or more junior personnel. They say the best way to learn a topic is to teach it, and I happen to be very fortunate in my career while I was going through, especially the AP and the SP. I was actually also developing a training course where I wound up using a lot of the CWNA materials to kind of build a training course for a vendor. And I learned so much in just having to build that, and then, you're up in front of the room, and the people out there are asking you questions. And granted, you're teaching them, but they're asking you questions, and sometimes the questions are dumb, and sometimes the questions are really insightful and really deep, which, you might get a question like, well, how long, how does it know? It's got to retransmit, right? And it forces you to learn. So if you get the opportunity to teach any aspect of wireless while you're going through the journey, seize it, because it's a great way to learn this stuff.
Yep, absolutely. And I think we have time for one more question. Someone has a question. Any hands being raised that I can't see because of the lights? Okay, if not, then we're going to wrap up. And just, I'll ask each one of you. I want to kind of spin it over now to like a Wi-Fi professional, a Wi-Fi career, or even just more general, a wireless career, a career in wireless technologies. What advice would you give someone if they really wanted to explore this as a dedicated career? Because we have a lot of people that come to the conference that, wireless is just one of the things they do. They do network administration in general. They do other things too, and they're here to learn about wireless. But they're interested in it. They've seen how everybody here is so passionate about it, and they think, I'd love to do that. So if someone wants to pursue that kind of career, what kind of advice would you give them for going that direction?
So at 7 Signal, I've got kind of a pretty nice perspective because I work with a lot of different customers and prospects, and you get to see what the network teams look like in a lot of enterprises, mostly in the U.S. But what I see is that there are very few shops that have, a good or specialized wireless engineer, but they all have the need for one. So just apply for the network engineering jobs. That's my advice. Sometimes those job applications get filtered through HR, and they look sort of like boilerplate. But if you apply and actually talk to someone on the team and say, I'm a specialist in Wi-Fi, that can really help you out. And then you can start, with that network engineer sort of generalist position, and in the right organization, become the wireless network engineer. So don't read too much into job descriptions. Just apply, put your, all your CWNP stuff on your resume and application, and you'd be surprised.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
I'd say branch out to as many things as you can. It's just about exploration. First of all, getting better, getting more experienced, and getting the CWNE title alone certifies for yourself and the workplace, everyone around you in your existing area, that this is the go-to guy when it comes to Wi-Fi or wireless. And there are so many opportunities other than just working for someone with Wi-Fi. So just being here, I can see consultants, I can see freelancers, I can see authors, I can see bloggers, podcasters. So, work today is not only about being an employee and having a profession, working for a vendor or a company. It could be anything that you can be doing on your own. So, and the platforms are there, and we see so many people that have established their own brand already, either as an individual or as a professional community. That's one way to go about it. And you can utilize, again, multiple channels through reading, writing, talking, even coming here up on stage. It's a big opportunity. And this is something I wanted to add, it's not only CWNEs that get to be here on stage, it's anyone with an interesting topic. And I see the different topics. This is my third consecutive years in Wi-Fi track. I would encourage anyone to think about anything, whether it's how to get something up on Miracast, all the way to how to hook up your car to an IoT home system. Anything goes. You never know where your next venture, or you could be the discovery of someone, or it could mean something to someone else. So it's a full road of possibilities.
Yeah. Although I must say, we probably won't have any more presentations on alpaca manure.
Let's hope not. I think I would say don't be afraid to take risks and move around in your career. If you're lucky enough to work for a large company, often you can move laterally, internally, from one department to another, one position to another, and to learn new things. Yeah. If you're working for small companies, sometimes that means you got to switch companies.
Or do everything.
And go do something else a little bit outside your comfort zone. I started working for a small MDU integrator, right? Then I did consulting work. Then I worked for a couple of different small AP vendors. Now I'm back working for a large MSP integrator. And it's given me some really, I think, unique perspectives on, how everything works in our business, not just from the MSP side, but also from the vendor side. So when I was at a vendor, I knew how our customers thought. And now that I'm back at an ISP, well, I know how, our vendors think and how they approach problems. And having that perspective is extremely useful in one's career. So don't be afraid to take risks. Don't be afraid to move around. Don't be afraid to take that plunge. It is risky and it can be nerve-wracking at times, but it's well worth it.
Excellent. Very good information. Well, let's say thank you to all of the CWNEs that came up to talk with us today. You have any comments?